bác sĩ Nguyễn Khoi. Ông là sinh viên quân y trong khóa 1963 đến năm 1969 tại trường quân y quân lực Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Ông làm nội trú trong các bệnh viện Sài Gòn từ năm 1967 cho đến năm 69, y sĩ trưởng của bệnh viện 1 Dã Chiến Quảng Ngãi và đã từng tham dự chiến dịch Hạ Lào năm 1971 cũng như tham dự mùa hè đỏ lửa năm 1972. Fellowship khoa giải phẫu chỉnh hình từ năm 1972 cho đến năm 1974. Ông cũng là trưởng khoa giải phẫu chỉnh hình của bệnh viện Đà Nẵng từ năm 1974 đến năm 1975. Internship và residency nội khoa tổng quát của trung tâm y khoa Oklahoma cho đến năm 1981, và hiện nay ông đang hành nghề tư về nội khoa tổng quát cho đến nay tại Apple Valley, California. Xin quý vị một tràng vỗ tay để chào đón bác sĩ Nguyễn Khoi.
Cùng các huynh, thưa các huynh cùng các đệ, tôi có cái bổn phận ngày hôm nay lên nói cảm tưởng về quyển sách này bằng tiếng Anh, cho nên tôi xin phép quý vị được nói bằng tiếng Anh bởi vì ông tác giả là người Đức. Uwe, I have read your book in English from back to back, and even the cover is already torn. I just want to let you know about it. Being born and growing up in a war-torn country, one has the duty at a very young age to find out a lot of questions about why that war, why with all the help of the superpowers like France, the United States, how come that we couldn't win? And these questions forced me to pore over all the books about military history since my young age. I went through Jean Latterie, I went through Paul Roy describing the debacle of the Route Coloniale 4 when they tried to withdraw from the northern town and cities of La Sơn and Cao Bang. And then finally the tragic encirclement in Dien Bien Phu. I admire them, but I could not find an answer. Well, then came the Second Indo-Chinese War, and then the American came. Well, you know, I rejoiced. Here comes John Wayne. How could we lose? And I fell upon a book by Bernard Ford, The Genius. At that time, the book was not even translated in English. It was written in French, called La guerre d'Indochine 1945-1954. It was not even translated in English. And then I went through all his book, but I couldn't grasp. Each time that I read him, I felt uncomfortable because he was a genius. He knew right away that the massive involvement of the United States Army and the way they train our army to wage a conventional war against the insurrectional war of Mao Zedong is very tough to win. As Uwe mentioned brilliantly in his book about Mao Zedong's quotation, he who cannot win the insurrectional war loses. He who cannot lose the insurrectional war will win. Not very long after the U.S. involvement, then come a social movement in this country, the anti-war leftist movement. And along with them, you see a bunch of journalists that I call the Woodstock generation. If you remember the Woodstock, the hippie movement. And I spend my time reading Neil Sheehan with The Shining Light, and I read David Hammerstein with The Best and the Brightest, to later on find out that all the information of these guys come from Phạm Xuân Ẩn, the famous spy of the North Vietnamese. If you remember, Stanley Carnell has written also a book and later on a TV series. You know who he hired as an assistant? Ngô Vĩnh Long. Ngô Vĩnh Long was a Viet Cong student in Boston. These people rarely mention about the soldiers of the Republic of Vietnam Army, let alone the civilians. None of them care about the Vietnamese soldiers, and if so, they do it in a very derogatory terms. None of them care about the massacre of the Khoi during the Tet Offensive. Only very recently, we begin to see some books written by the former American advisors to different South Vietnamese army, and they began to recognize the effort and the sacrifices of our soldiers, but yet they don't mention about the civilians, the victim of the war. So Siemon-Netto book finally came to me as a catharsis, as a soothing wound, healing process for all of us. You will be disappointed if you read the book with the purpose to look at statistics. There is no statistics, there is no map. It's pure raw experiences, personal experiences of a decent journalist when he gets into contact with the people. It takes a man who grew up in the aftermath of World War II, among the ruins of the devastated Germany, to feel the misery of the Vietnamese people. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I will not say that you enjoy the book, because the book, when you read it, will give you pains and flashbacks. It will force you to face the violence of war. Only then, after shedding tears over the war victims, only then that finally comes awakening and redemption for all of us. Unlike most of us who were assigned to different field or different city fighting the enemy, the journalist has a bird's eye view. During the day, Uwe can be deep in a battle with the platoon, yet in the afternoon he's already at the so-called 5 o'clock follies, the daily press conference of the US military that Uwe called the theater of the absurd, where nothing makes sense. It's only statistics, number of KIA killed in action, the wounded, the prisoners taken. The previous day, Uwe can be with a platoon patrolling a sector controlled by the enemy, and the next day he can be in an airplane interviewing Prime Minister Nguyen. You will cry, I can assure you, when he recounted the execution of the whole family of a South Vietnamese official hanged by the VC. You'll cry with him when he talks about what he calls the urchins of Saigon. That's what we call really the children, the dust of life children in Saigon, Bụi đời. And you'll cry with him over the graves of the victims of Khoi during the Tet Offensive. I stumbled in one word in his book, And that was when it shook me over. I don't remember how many young soldiers who died on the operating table or in my arms. And somehow, all of them, before they died, they called their mom. They called their mother. And in his book, Uwe said the same thing. Young soldiers dying, called his mom, thank God. You laughed with him when he talked about the orphans in Vietnam. But I love the most is when Uwe quoted Graham Greene, the famous American novelist who wrote The Quiet American. Well, during the 40s and the 50s, when Graham Greene came to Saigon, he dated some Vietnamese ladies, and he said that this is not Uwe's word, okay? This is Graham Greene's. To take an Annamite to bed with you is like to take a bird. They twitter and sing on your pillow. Well, I laugh my head off. Because personally, I wish that Graham Greene would have a second life now. And nowadays, if he tried to date a Vietnamese lady, she will bring the whole one-man band or the whole karaoke machine to try to kill you by deafening you. But I'm not going to describe everything Uwe wrote in his book. I strongly recommend you to buy the book both in English and its translation to Vietnamese, brilliantly done by my brother-in-law, Khoi and Nguyen. And you should not buy one book. You should get at least 10, like me, so that you can send to your friends. There's one thing Uwe does not mention in his book I want to share with him. In spite of all the travail he went through, he kept his religious faith. I myself, I have to admit that I had my faith shaken. So let me quote some words from a very renowned journalist. I wish he could be here. He's a Vietnamese journalist, ex-airborne, ex-journalist in the prison, in the concentration camp for 10 years, or more than 10 years. He said that God is omnipresent, God is omniscient, but sometimes I feel that God may be a little bit indifferent and unfair. God exists, he accepts, but so does the devil. And if the devil is not equal to God, at least he's as powerful. And Uwe, being able to keep your faith, I have to take my hat off. So, Uwe, let me be grateful to you for having written this book. The Vietnamese will appreciate you and love you. And I'm quoting a character, not Uwe's word. I'm quoting the word of a character in the book. Uwe, the Vietnamese people will love you comme la mer, comme le ciel. You know who I'm talking about. So may I have a minute to pay tribute to another person, to honor this most admirable person. Nguyen, could you stand up again, please, so I can see your beauty? I'm talking about Nguyen, Uwe. Nguyen, I would like to thank you for your boundless love you gave to Uwe. Your understanding. I'm not sure that my wife would do that. For you gave over a lot of space so that he can experience, mature, and harvest the wisdom during his journey through hell. Only then he can write such a powerful book. So guys, take out your checkbooks and buy this stand for a while, as it has been on mine. Thank you all.
If I may say so, I was particularly moved by Baxi Khoi's statement, and like to respond to one aspect of it. He mentioned that I am a theologian in addition to being a journalist, and he admits to having had his faith shaken in Vietnam. And this is an experience that all of us have shared, whether we were journalists there or soldiers. So I know very much how I can very much empathize with you, how you felt when you thought that the evil one was as strong as God himself. If I may just make one quick, this is not a Bible class here, but one theological statement about this. In Christian theology, as articulated particularly by the famous German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer in World War II, this is addressed by the following statement. In this godless world in which we live, meaning in the world where temporarily the evil one still reigns, we are called to suffer with God in a godless world as human beings, which in turn means that God is suffering with us in this godless world. We also know, of course, especially those of us who are practicing Christians, that the ultimate victor in this conquest is already known, and that is Christ, or it's God. You have shown in these 40 years, almost 40 years since your homeland has been conquered by what I believe to be a very evil force. You have shown so much rectitude and fortitude and faith. So I would commend you for this. I congratulate you. You have been wonderful. I just want to leave you with this Bonhoeffer word. Anybody who wishes to know about it, I'll be happy to send this by email. Thank you very much. Now I'm open for questions.